So now we're going to talk about the rock cycle. A rock is a mixture of different minerals. And depending upon under what conditions the rock formed, it not only has a different name, but it has different characteristics. So there are three main types of rocks. There's igneous, which means fire-formed, sedimentary, or settled, and metamorphic, or changed form. So if we start with igneous, essentially these form from the cooling of molten rock or magma or lava. But depending upon the circumstances and the conditions under which they form, they can have different properties. One of the things that can be different is the mineral content, the chemistry that's in them. But another really cool difference between different types of igneous rocks is what they look like, the texture, the size of the crystals. And this tells you the conditions under which it cooled. So here is a piece of granite. Don't take it for granted. And hopefully you can see that the crystals are fairly large. You can see the crystals of different colors. That means that this took a long time, relatively speaking, to cool so that the crystals could grow very large. It's sort of like making rock candy in a solution of sugar water. The longer you let it sit, the greater the crystal size is. But here's one. This is called rhyolite. You don't really see crystals in here. The texture is very even. This cooled relatively quickly, did not have time for large crystals to form. And if it forms sort of instantaneously, if it flash freezes, if the magma or lava shot out of a volcano, you get something that looks very glassy. This is obsidian. The black form is sometimes called Apache's tears. Another form of volcanic glass is pumice. Pumice is very light. We all know what pumice is good for. Exfoliation, that's right. So if I show you an igneous rock, can you tell me if it formed underground or on the surface? Well, can you see large crystals? Then it formed underground. This is what we call an intrusive or plutonic, named after Pluto, the god of the underworld. That's the kind of igneous rock this is. What about this one? This is basalt. It's kind of an ugly gray rock that many of you find in your driveways if your driveway is unpaved. You can't really see crystals in this, so this formed on the surface. This is extrusive or volcanic. So those are the igneous rocks. The settled rocks are made out of bits of other rocks called sediment. And depending on the kind of sediment, it can have a very different texture. This one here feels very sandy, because the kind of sediment it's made of is sand. This is sandstone. This is a sedimentary rock. It looks more like it's made out of pebbles. We call this a conglomerate. And this sedimentary rock is actually made out of pulverized bits of seashells. This is limestone. So seashells are made out of carbonate minerals. So this rock is made out of carbonate minerals. How could I prove that? Remember the acid test? Now, under conditions where sediment gets compactified and squished together and cemented with water, we form these layers of sedimentary rock. And those layers of sedimentary rock are called strata. And you might remember that term back from the book when we were talking about the different layers of rock that are formed at different periods of time and the fossils that are in the different layers of the different strata. Now, if a sedimentary or igneous rock undergoes baking and squishing, if it undergoes the processes of heating and being pressurized, it can change form. So remember the sandstone. If the sandstone undergoes conditions of heat and pressure, it turns into this. This is called quartzite. But my favorite is what happens if you take the ugly old limestone and you exert heat and pressure on that, you get marble. Metamorphosis. This is the caterpillar. This is the butterfly. Now, there are certain kinds of metamorphic rocks that are interesting because of their structure. If you look at this one right here, it might remind you of mica. It actually is partially made out of mica. It's called a mica schist. And it's a little hard to get apart the layers, harder than it is in regular mica, but you could get apart these layers. But if you look at this one, it would be a lot harder to get apart the layers of this one. This is sort of like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You can see the peanut butter and the jelly, but if you try to peel apart the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it doesn't end well. This is what's called a gneiss. This is literally a gneiss rock.